Good evening. I'm Susan Chinquamani, one of Greenville Women Giving's 4 co-chairs. And I know that Greenville Women Giving always starts on time, but that's our reputation. But with everybody getting used to coming to in-person events, we're just cutting ourselves a little slack tonight and letting everybody get seated before we start the program. I wanted to welcome you here tonight, both our in-person guests and our live streaming guests, as we begin the year with our first education session. And this one is Spotlight on Human Services. Before we begin the program, we would like to thank our partners who support us throughout the year. They are Town, Brand in Motion, and Details Public Relations. And now I would like to introduce Beth Cruz, who will share with you the start of our program.
Thank you, Susan. You should have received the speaker bios when you replied. And so in the interests of time and paper, saving the planet, we are not printing out speaker bios anymore, but you should have them in your email. If you do not, we will attach them when we send the link for the live stream. So you should have them one way or another. Tonight, we are honored to have racial equity and economic mobility as our theme, and 2 wonderful speakers who co-chair the committee, Merl Code and David Lominack, to share with us tonight. Thank you, gentlemen.
You want to go first? It's all you. You can see we haven't rehearsed. Good evening. Thank you for inviting David and me to address you this evening. As co-chair of the Racial Equity and Economic Mobility Commission for this county, and when asked to serve as such, I was honored. I did not know that as a retired guy, how much interruption to my life this would be. These folks with day jobs like to get started early in the morning, and we folks with no jobs don't enjoy getting up too early in the morning. David asked me to give you a little bit of what my life was like. I am 73% alone to being a century. You may steal that from me. In my lifetime, I'm born in 1948 in Seneca, South Carolina. So I assume the experiences of folks who look like me in Seneca are reflected here in Greenville. And I tell you that because in Seneca, in my youth, we were segregated. Everything. Schools, neighborhoods, downtown, we could shop and give our money, but that was about all we could do. The movie theater was segregated such that we were relegated to the balcony. Now, we could see the same movie that everybody else saw, but we had to be in the balcony to do it. When the Civil Rights Act was passed, the folks in Seneca, South Carolina, designed an economic segregation. What they did to us was you could see the same movie downstairs for 25 or 30 cents, and you could see that same movie upstairs for 15 cents. Now, being of color and really not having any money, you know where we chose to sit. All of us. That was the design. So when you hear words like systemic, Don't get angry, because we're not calling anybody any names. We're just saying something was put in place that harmed us. Just keep that in mind. Don't let these buzzwords cause you to snap your head back. Just understand the meaning of what systemic means. You put it in place. I'm riding from Seneca, South Carolina to Pickens to a Methodist Youth Fellowship conference for youth. I'm about 11 or 12 years old. We're coming down 123. We hit Pickens and we pull up beside a red light. Two white guys in a pickup truck pull up beside us. I'm sitting behind my pastor in the backside. Two white guys in a pickup truck pull up beside us, and the one nearest to me pulls out a sawed-off shotgun, stands out the window, and puts it in my face. I'm 11 years old. And he says to me, calls me the N-word, and says, if I ever see you waving at a white woman again, I'll blow your brains out. I'm 11 years old. I was playing with the wind. You put your hand out, the wind will blow it back. You turn it sideways, you can bring it back. I was playing with the wind. A man pulls a gun in my face because in his mind, I waved at a white woman. And allegedly, we were able to go and eat in public accommodations, at least over in Seneca, South Carolina. What they did to us was the doors would open, but you were not invited in. What they did was post the Confederate flag outside the door and let it hang. And nobody told you couldn't go in there, but you know you shouldn't. And you couldn't, and you bet not. What was worse, those same restaurants had black folks in the kitchen cooking, but we couldn't go to eat. I had to go to the back door of that restaurant and knock while they were in there cooking. And my cousin might come to the door and say, close the door, go back inside, fix it for me, bring it to the back door. I pay her for it, no matter what the weather was. Systemic. I grew up 7 miles from Clemson University. We couldn't attend Clemson University, and Harvey Gantt went to my church when he came to Clemson to be the first. He came to St. James United Methodist Church in Seneca, South Carolina. It's my church. This great football team you all see on Saturdays, and we saw them too, except we had to sit on the bank. We were not allowed to sit in a seat to watch a football game. There were no black players at the time. And when I tell you we had to sit on the bank, I don't mean when it was warm and sunny. If you wanted to see the game, you sat in that bank in whatever weather it was. Why do I tell you all of that? I tell you all of that because change needed to come, and it came. That's the 1960s. And as a result of George Floyd kneeling or getting his neck kneeled on by Derek Chauvin for 9 minutes and 29 seconds, I'm not sure the conscience of America would have been awakened. But for some reason, it was. It touched people to watch the cruelty of human to human. It didn't matter the color of that young man's skin as you watched another man put his knee in and squeeze the life out of him. Hopefully humanity jumped in. Now, having someone like me is not good for an unstructured program. I'm going to sit down, but I got so much stuff I want to talk to you about because we need your help. And we need your help because you belong to that group of folk who have always helped. As I told you, I've been through these kinds of movements before. Two groups of folk helped change America. The faith community and white women. If I have time, I'm going to read you just a little bit from the letter from the Birmingham jail that probably some of you aren't even aware of. But I will read it to you. It ain't long. It'll say, was he writing it today or did he write that in 1960? When you hear it, I think you'll understand. I'm sorry, Dave. Tell them about the REEM stuff.
We've been doing this the last 15 months, and I have tried to make sure that I never follow Merl for the obvious reasons. Today, we are going to go back and forth, so I promise you will see more of Merl, who is, I tell you, I'm amazed every time I get to sit and listen to him, especially when he talks about the things he experienced growing up, which I will be the first to tell you I did not. So I'm David Lominack. I'm the South Carolina Market President for TD Bank, and I am going to tell you about REEM in just a second. But I do want to tell you, I know what you all do in this community and how long you've been doing it and the money that you raise and the money that you put back into this community. And I just want to say thank you as a fellow citizen for what you do. I sincerely appreciate it. So picking up where Merl stopped with George Floyd, that coupled with a lot of other very unfortunate situations late last year, or I should say summer of last year, Carlos Phillips, President and CEO of the Greenville Chamber, Megan Bart, President and CEO of United Way, and Sean Dogan, Interim President and CEO of the Urban League, basically got together and wrote an op-ed to the paper. And it was an op-ed / a call to action. And they will tell you they felt really good about when they sent it off and said, all right, that's perfect. We'll get everybody rallied. And then it went, wait a minute. I think we just called ourselves to action. We got to do something about it. So those three individuals and those three organizations partnered to form what is now the Greenville County Racial Equity and Economic Mobility Commission. They formed a group of 35 commissioners that come from all different backgrounds in this community. We have representation from criminal justice, from healthcare, from education, from the private sector, the public sector, you name it, we've got it on that commission. And Merl and I were humbled to be asked to co-chair this commission. And I was just sharing with somebody, we formed it in August of last year. This, let's call it now 13-month journey has been filled with some just moments of celebration and then some moments of just kind of despair that, oh my gosh, this is not going to be as easy as we thought it was. When we started in August of last year, the original intent was, we got 35 great minds in this room. Let's get our thoughts organized and we're going to issue recommendations to the community in December. We'll be off and running. That was bold, because here we are a year later and we're still working really, really hard. We, after a couple of meetings, quickly realized this is big work. If it were easy, if there were a playbook, some other community would have figured it out and we could just go pick it up and do it here. It's not that easy. And we've studied other communities and we've talked with other communities who are in this similar work and have learned a lot from those communities. But we clearly knew by December that we're going to need more time just to get recommendations, right? So we formed 5 committees, okay? So we have a criminal justice committee, healthcare, income and wealth, education, and community-wide learning, okay? Each of those committees has 2 co-chairs that serve on the commission, and then each one has a professional paid facilitator. We asked each of those committees, starting in January of this year, to start meeting on your own between larger commission meetings and begin to identify what are the challenges in this community, where can we put our resources, what are the recommendations and strategies we should put forth, which we'll come back to that in a second. What I do think is important is to let you know that when we started this commission, People come to this work from different backgrounds, different experiences, different opinions, some strongly held one way or another. And we really tried to level set in data. Okay? Merl, if it's okay, I'm going to share a couple of statistical points. So in 2019, well before this commission was even dreamed of, the United Way commissioned a report, so the Racial Equity Index. So looked at Greenville County from a racial perspective. Let me just give you a couple of statistics. Greenville County is worse than almost every county in the nation for helping poor and minority children out of poverty and up the economic ladder. Black household income is 50% of white household income. This is worse than the state and U.S. averages. 22.5% of Black children live in areas of concentrated poverty compared to 4.8% of white children. The infant mortality rate is twice as high for Black babies compared to white babies. 69% of white students meet or exceed the third grade reading standard compared to 31% of Black students. I brought this, and you can find this on our website, which is reemgvl.org, reemgvl.org. You can read through this. We've had people tear this up and down and sideways to say, nah, that's not right. That's not right. And every one of them have come back and, yep. I mean, this is true. This is what our community is. And unfortunately, if you drive down Main Street in Greenville, which I work on and love, and this community has done an unbelievable job rebuilding and creating Greenville what it is today. But that doesn't tell the whole story of what's happening in Greenville, and we have to be willing to accept that. So I'm going to turn it over to Merl for a second to talk a little bit more about what the committees have been doing, and then what they're going to do between now and the end of the year, and then we'll kind of talk about next steps.
Since David told you about those 5 committees, and some of the leadership has changed based upon changes in their work schedule, so forth and so on. But let me give you an idea who are some of these people we're talking about. We have tried to find leadership of this community to help us make the change that we need. And I must say this to you, because I hope you feel as I do. I am convinced that if there's any place in this nation that can address issues of community and humanity and faith and courage, it is here. We cannot solve the world's problems. We can't even solve Gaffney's problems. But we can do something about Greenville, South Carolina, our problems. Those statistics that Dave gave you were Greenville statistics. And it's interesting because we had a meeting at 8:30 this morning. And I asked for statistics. I asked them to give Dave and me something to come and tell you that you might not have known. And we both jotted down the same kinds of stuff. Say, what? The Institute for Child Success. Goodness gracious, I see Jamie is here. Trying to address that issue, prenatal issue, educational issues, having our children ready. Help us, Women in Giving. I don't know what Dave's going to ask you for. We didn't come to make a pitch, but I'm going to ask you to help Greenville County be what we can be. And use your strength and influence to make certain that we do all we can to change the plight of folk who are your neighbors. I want your children to succeed. And looking at some of y'all, I want your grandchildren to succeed. And maybe some great grands in there. Need your help. I happened to be here when this organization was founded. And I knew the ladies who goodness gracious, who took that challenge. But look at you now. You built it. Help us build a Black community that you're proud of. I suggest to you, and have always suggested to you, Merl Code is no exception to anything. I just happen to have somebody help me. There are so many Merl Codes out there. Men and women who can lead, who have great thoughts, engage. It makes the community stronger. It makes all of us stronger. Let me go back to those committees. Education, Baxter Wynn, Liz Seaman, Dr. Burke Royster, Jason Richards, Minor Shaw, and there are others. But those are the top 5 that we brought in, and then we brought in some others. On income and wealth, Ernst & Young's Jessica Donnan, Minority Economic Development Institute's S.T. Payton, Hughes Development, Robert Hughes, the City of Greenville, Knox White, Endeavor, Joe Irwin, and we've brought in others. Criminal Justice, Tracy Fann, Reverend J.M. Fleming, Sheriff Hobart Lewis, Bishop Sam Zimmerman, Chief of Police Howard Thompson, all in criminal justice. Health, the 2 leaders of our health systems during the COVID-19 have made time to be a part of us, and when they couldn't, they made sure they sent somebody. This is important to this community. We're not playing. We can change stuff here, but we need your help. Let me share with you that piece that I said I was going to try to read to you, and then I'm going to sit down and let David do more of his stuff. This is Martin Luther King's letter from the Birmingham jail. This is the 1960s, and I don't even know when in the 1960s. But listen to what it said. First, I must confess that over the last few years, I have been greatly disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in the stride toward freedom is not the white citizens' counselor or the Ku Klux Klanners, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly say, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I can't agree with you with your methods of direct action, who paternalistically feels that he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by the myth of time, who constantly advises the Negro to wait until a more convenient season. This piece, you can help. This is what he says. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection. The reason that we've come to this place is because I see allies. I see partners. I see folks who've always been there for what is right. We need your help, your expertise. Yeah, I guess we need your money, don't we?
We'll take it.
Oh, we'll take your money. But we need your engagement. We need your involvement. I'm going to tell a story now. I'm going to sit down. I got a phone call last week from a physician I did not know. In that phone call, he told me he wanted me to give him a call on a neighborhood matter. And he was a friend of David Lominack's. I'm retired. So when I saw David the next time, I said, Dave, I got this phone call, and I told him who it was from. He said, Merle, I understand what it's about. He said, I would suggest you not call him. Just let it go. I knew then what it was about. And I said, David, I return my calls. I'm going to call him. I was so happy, however, that when I called him back, I got his answering machine. So I have fulfilled my promise to David to call him. But this is what I said. I am retired now. I don't get involved in community matters. But if you will leave me a detailed message about what the purpose of this call, if I am able to assist you, I shall return your call, but your message must be detailed. He calls me back. Now, folks, I know sometimes you just say, no, that can't be so. I do not know this man. Never heard of him before. But he calls me back and says the following. There's a house in our neighborhood that's been run down for a few years. We know who owns the house. Their mother died. And we have a nice neighborhood. And I said to myself, and what does that have to do with me? And then he says, he's a black guy. And tells me his name. And then tells me he's called other members of the black guy's family. And he wants, because he says, I don't want people to not want anybody black to live in their neighborhood because of the way he keeps his house. And then he says, there are other black folks in the neighborhood who keep up their yards and keep their houses nice. Well, then why are you calling me about the one who isn't? The thought process in his mind is that evidently if you look like me, he generalized all of us on the basis of this one guy's house when he said there are other black folk in the neighborhood who keep their house up. But he wanted me, I guess, as co-chair of REEM, to call this man to fix his house. I just want you to think about that mentality for a minute. It's not exactly that not in my backyard, but it's very close. He stereotyped all of us based upon one neighbor who will not take care of his property. Thank you for telling me not to call him back.
I do want to clarify, he's an acquaintance. He's not a friend. And the other part of that story, which Merle and I talked about, is before Merle called him back the first time, he reached out to me to see if I could leverage my relationship with Merle to get Merle to call him back to talk about this. And I said, absolutely not. There are plenty of white people in my neighborhood that don't keep up their yards or their houses. This is not a Merle problem. Sorry. Merle, when we talked about it, was a bigger man than I was, because I said, don't call him back, and said some other things. And Merle said, nope, no, I'm gonna call him back. So he's a better man than I would have been in that situation. Going back to REEM in the committees real quick, let me tell you what we're working on between now and December, and then December and beyond. And then really what we want is some good dialogue and good questions, tough questions from all of you. Between now and December the 31st, all of the committees are working very hard to take their draft recommendations of what we should do in this community to improve the lives of our Black citizens. We are unapologetically focused on the Black community and refine those strategies. Now, what we all have to remember is we could put 1,000 good strategies on a piece of paper. We can't do all 1,000 at the same time. So we've asked the committees to really try to refine the recommendations down to things that we can accomplish in this community. Some of them are going to be short-term. Some of them are going to be long-term, and that's okay. But let's focus on the ones that have the greatest impact in this community the quickest. So they are working on that. And in this process, they will begin to reach out more into the community, holding focus groups. Some committees have already been doing that. So stay tuned for opportunities to get engaged in that process. One of the things that we've said since we started this August of last year is that we simply cannot let this be a fancy report sitting in a binder that ultimately goes on a shelf somewhere. Too many people, well beyond the 35 commissioners, have spent a lot of time and a lot of energy in this work. And we owe it to our community to make sure that doesn't happen. So we are focused on sustainability. What is sustainability? We're not quite sure yet. We are holding deep discussions with other organizations that may be potential homes for REEM. We have discussed, and I don't mind sharing with you, we have discussed, should REEM be its own organization? And we've ultimately decided that's not in the best interest of the work at this point. Maybe one day down the road that would be the case. But we think it's important for the home of REEM to have an immediate foundation, support, and frankly, the financial backing to help us bring in an executive director of REEM that wakes up every single day thinking about this work and thinking about the strategies that we have proposed and moving those strategies forward in this community. What we've also tried to, we've tried to temper enthusiasm a bit in that when we do talk about these recommendations, we don't want anybody to suddenly think the work is done. We've barely just started. This is going to take months and years to be able to look back and say we made a difference. It's going to take a lot of hard work. The recommendations are simply trying to get us to the start line. And we've talked to communities who have been at this for decades. Some have even come to our REEM meetings, and they frankly have been really impressed with how far we've come in less than a year. At that point, less than a year. And that goes to what Merl said. That's where we think this community is different than a lot of other communities. And I do strongly believe that we have the opportunity to make these changes in Greenville County. So stay tuned on the sustainability, but we have had some very productive conversations, again, with organizations that would likely be a future home and keep this work going. Because again, the recommendations are clearly important, but making sure that someone's going to wake up every day helping us achieve those recommendations is equally important. So with that, unless you have something else you want to, okay. Hopefully we've got time. We didn't go too long, did we? No, we're good. So Q&A, and I do think I didn't get a chance to tell you, just for the folks on the video, we just need to repeat the question so that they know what the question is.
David, what is your source of funding? And how will you know when you achieve success?
The first one's easy. It's already, see, I'm a slow learner. So the first question is, what is our source of funding? And the second question is, how will we know what success looks like? Or how will we know when we've achieved success? So funding thus far, it's been some organizations. Hollingsworth has been a wonderful supporter. United Way of Greenville County has been a supporter. Other organizations, I'm pleased to say, my company has funded it, but we haven't had an overly organized funding strategy yet, because most of what we've been doing is paying for the meeting space at the Greenville Convention Center and things like that. So kind of more moderate operating expenses. Each of the three organizations have really helped by using some of their staff support to help with this work as well. And that has helped cut down on our expenses thus far. I will say we are paying facilitators, and then we're also paying, many of you, I'm sure, know Nika White and her consulting firm. They have been helping us be intentional and being organized in all of this work. And we didn't have that for the first 6 months. And I think Merl and I wished we had it for the first 6 months, because the last 6 have been much easier and much more organized. But anyway, so we've kind of bootstrap funded it up to this point. As we move forward, we're going to have to look at longer term funding. And it's not going to be, go out and get 5,000 here and 2,500 there. We're going to have to go talk to some larger institutions that can commit to $100,000 over 3 years, $500,000 over 3 years. If we're going to be serious about making change in this community, we've got to put the kind of person in place that commands that kind of salary in order to get the work done. So more to come on the more permanent funding, but that's what we've been doing thus far. The success piece that's a great question, and one in which I'm not sure we have a great answer yet. There will be certain recommendations that we put forth that will be easy to look at and say, okay, we fixed that, or we changed that. Maybe it's a policy. Maybe it's even a law. Maybe it's something else, but we'll be able to look at it and say we did it. There are going to be a lot of other strategies that are a little mushier, as I'll call it. It's going to be harder to look back in 6 months or 12 months and say, we did it. We solved that one. So we've got to figure out what those metrics look like. And that's, again, where we're going to depend on the sustainability of REEM. And we're going to have to be able to demonstrate that we're achieving this in order to get the kind of funding that we're talking about. So we're not there yet, but we'll continue to work on what those benchmarks are going to be. For me personally, I think they're going to be small things that come up over 3 years and 5 years. Whether I'm sitting in a meeting that today is 90% white and is, may call it a bank meeting. I'll be the first to admit that we need more diversity in our company. What can I do within my company to help improve diversity? So when I'm sitting in a bank meeting, instead of it being 90 or 95% white, there's more diversity. So I think there are going to be things like that that may not necessarily be on a piece of paper that we measure, but that you see it every day and you feel it every day.
Once those recommendations are made, who will be charged, or what organizations will be charged with carrying them out?
All right. So the question is, once the recommendations are made, what organizations will be tasked with moving them forward? That's kind of the part that we got to get, and that's the sustainability piece of it, right? So we've got to get somebody in place who takes these recommendations, because a lot of this work is already happening. But in some cases, maybe this organization is focused over here, and this organization in a similar line is focused over here. How can we help convene those two organizations to focus on this one particular recommendation? And that's why I think that REEM doesn't need to be a standalone organization. It needs to be a convener and a partner under the umbrella of another organization. Some of those conversations have already started, and each of these committees have been inviting subject matter experts into those conversations to say, what are you working on in healthcare? What are you already working on in criminal justice? What are you working on in education? And so we're already tapping into some of those subject matter experts, but that's going to be the key. How do we pull the organizations together that can move these initiatives forward? I don't know why I'm answering all the questions.
That's all right.
Sorry.
Let me also make you aware, if you've been listening to the news over the last 3 or 4 days, the city of Greenville has gone to almost a neighborhood policing as an experiment to go back to what they used to do, having folks out walking the neighborhoods, getting to know the children and the people they have been working on that through this committee for over 9 months. So some of the things you're seeing won't have a big splash, but we think will have a meaningful opportunity in our community to change some things. You need to know the people who will talk to you and tell you what's going on that you would not know. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I would imagine that you are engaging many citizen committees to draw information from in these neighborhoods. Could you talk about that a little bit?
There are focus groups under each one of these committees, and those focus groups are designed to do exactly that. Identify the social networks, all the committees, all of the different organizations within the community who are doing certain things, and making certain that they're at the table with their voices, hearing their concern about what they do every day for a living, hearing their concern about the folks who go out into the neighborhoods and trying to help folk, rather than for us making decisions here We're trying to find out for the folks who are being most affected by the folks who work with them on a daily basis and bringing some of those folks in. Did I answer your question?
But do you have any events planned within our community that will get the word out more to just the public and the things that we can do on an individual basis?
Yes, we do. And I'm going to tell you about what I know. David is our organizational and structure guy. We have a program this coming Sunday called Step Up to the Plate at the Fluor Field. And I'll let Dave tell you a little bit about it. But all of this is on the REEM website. And if you haven't visited it, please do so. And the reason I say that is because if you heard me earlier when I read that last paragraph, it said folks who have a shallow understanding of what this issue is all about. It's hard for you to grasp it if you don't understand the language and how it got to where it is. This REEM website provides you with information. It tells you in what you can read if you wish to, how we got to where we are. Okay? Please read some of that stuff and share it with your friends. Share it with your friends and talk about it. Hopefully we can make a change. Go ahead and tell them about some of this stuff.
Yeah. So you asking that question is another reminder that we as a commission have got to do even more in terms of outreach and making sure that we're trying to get this message out to as many people as we can. But we do have an event called Step Up to the Plate on Sunday, Fluor Field from 2 to 6, from about 2:30 to 3:30-ish. Merl, myself, and the 3 leaders that I mentioned earlier that formed REEM, we're going to have a panel discussion, kind of talking about the history of REEM. And then from, I guess it's 4 to 5, we're going to have a keynote speaker. There are going to be some vendors and a lot of networking, and it's family friendly. That's probably it is. It's the first kind of public event that we've had like that, but it's certainly one of many that we will be having as we move forward. Merl is right. I mean, please go to the website. And we've got some videos on there. We've got other information. We've got the racial equity index that I mentioned. The other thing I jotted down about kind of success. One of the things that I will take away from, I guess when we get to December from the previous 15 or so months is the conversation that is occurring because of the formation of REEM. We're here talking about this topic today. Merl and I have a number of videos from white and black preachers in this community who are talking about REEM and specifically REEM from the pulpit, some of whom I can probably assure you weren't talking about REEM 2 years ago. It has created a space, I think, for people to have a conversation that some feel uncomfortable having. And I can promise you, we've had some uncomfortable conversations in the REEM Commission meetings. I'll just tell you just real quickly, when we first started, somebody said, well, let's make sure we record these meetings so we can share it with the public. I said, oh no, and we're still not there yet because it's 35 people and we can't meet every week, but we've got to have a space as a commission that we can ask questions and not fear that we're going to be judged because we use the wrong term or ask it the wrong way, or our intent and our delivery we're not connected. That has been a strong theme that we got to make sure that we can have a place to have these conversations. And one of the other things Merl talked about, some of the buzzwords that you hear in the media from using it one way or another. One of the things that we did, we had 2 sessions with all the commissioners where we've created a glossary of a lot of terms. Some of them are, like diversity, and then some of them are critical race theory. What does that mean? Let's talk about it. It's not a political discussion. Here's the definition of what that is. And it's a safe place for people to call in and have that conversation and ask, well, I'm hearing this, or I'm hearing that, or I think this, where is it? So that's been an important step in our journey, is making sure that we kind of level set with some of the terms that we use as a commission. And again, we're still learning. But I found that particular session, we were doing some lunch and learns. I found that particular session very impactful. And I don't think this is a secret. Hopefully it's not. If it is, don't tell anybody I told you. But listen, critical race theory is a topic it's a conversation that gets reaction strongly from both sides of however you enter that conversation. And we heard that clear from the commissioners during the glossary discussion. And so tomorrow at lunch, we're doing a lunch and learn specifically on critical race theory. And we're asking some educational experts to come and talk about what that is, again, to help arm us with historical facts and knowledge and help us kind of arrive at what some of these words mean and maybe try to take some of the heat out of some of them so that we can have calmer conversations in our community to get to the right place. Sure.
Thinking about the Step Up to the Plate event, are you gonna get the word out to the Black communities and neighborhoods, and how will that happen?
Let me answer that one. Yeah. Okay. So the question was, how are we getting the word out, kind of period, and then how are we specifically getting the word out in the Black community? Again, for the most part, other than Nika White's team, it's kind of been a volunteer effort. A lot of us are sending blast emails out to people that we know, but absolutely through the Urban League's connections, they're sending out mass emails. Chamber, mass emails. United Way, mass emails. The faith community, we've been trying to ask them to send out mass emails to their congregation, both white and Black, frankly. So that's how we've been trying to do it. But again, as we get more momentum, I think it will be easier for us to get the attention that I think that we want. We probably got 250 to 300 people registered for Sunday. I would love for that to be 2,000.
And you can register online.
Yes.
So, first of all, I've never been under the illusion that Greenville was leading the way in any kind of racial or upward economic progress, but I am shocked to hear the statistics that y'all have given us tonight. And just as somebody who is in marketing, and I can tell several people tonight have touched on this, I hear that Joe Irwin is on one of your committees. I really hope that as you come to some sort of consensus on priorities for each of the committees, that there will be a really organized, strong, concerted marketing, PR, social media effort, because you could go out in a huge way and tell people, I think most people would be like me, they would be shocked to hear these statistics. And I just think, you get one good chance at really getting out there in a strong, bold way. And I really think that marketing, as these other committees coalesce, that would be something to shoot for.
Okay, I don't know that I can repeat that entire thing, but let me sum it up because you are 100% right. And the recommendation was you got to make sure you communicate this the right way the first time and with as much gusto as you possibly can and put in the data. And that's why I said it was important for this commission to ground itself in the data. And we absolutely will do that when we put these recommendations forth in the community. As a quick side note, so every Tuesday morning, Merl, myself, and a group of about 15 other people meet for about an hour to an hour and a half to move this work forward every Tuesday. And every Tuesday, Merl complains about it being at 8:30. And we made it at 8:30 to accommodate Merl. And this morning, we had a lengthy discussion about something that was about to go to the broader community. And when we looked at it, we said, we can't do this. We're not ready yet for this particular piece. We're not going to get many chances to get this right. And if we don't get it right, then we're going to lose people before we've even had a chance to have a conversation. So we pulled that one small thing back. But yes, when you're talking about the recommendations, absolutely. I do not know what it's going to look like yet. We hadn't figured it out yet. Y'all have all heard that phrase, changing the tire when you're going 65 miles an hour down the highway. we've been using the phrase that we're building a spaceship on the way to the moon. And we are. So, but absolute fair point there. Yes.
Curious about, use of the term commission. So commission, you think of a commission, you investigate, you collect data, you develop recommendations. So I can see that part of it, but part of me thinks it feels antithetical a little bit to the work that you're doing. It feels top down to me. So I was just curious about the thought around that, and maybe it was just, it's not important, it's unimportant, but sometimes words matter.
Yeah. So the question is kind of how did we get to the term commission? Because that has some different meanings. Do you want to?
Answer your questions, I don't know.
And neither do I.
Yeah, how we got to, but I will tell you the gravamen of your question was, where are we getting our information from? Well, that's why we have on this commission the freedom fighters upstate, who you see in the newspaper every 4 or 5 days somewhere fighting something about injustice. Miss Tracy Fant is on this commission. I don't know how to name commission yet, but she's on. Reverend J.M. Fleming of the NAACP is on this commission. Bishop Sam Zimmerman, NAACP, is on this commission. Reverend Sean Dogan, who is the head, and the new head is joined them. She met us this morning for the first time. She has joined our commission. So I'm saying to you that, and those task force that I talked about earlier, are meeting with organizations who are on the ground. So we aren't trying to give them a top-down approach. We know that doesn't work. But sometimes the bottom-up approach doesn't work either, because they don't understand what's in the middle. And so this has been exhilarating and frustrating, because David's a young man and I'm a older man than David. And I want my legacy to be something I left this community, and this is it for me. I've done some other stuff, but this one, if we can accomplish this, change the lives of some folk who are your neighbors, your friends, your co-workers, if we can change the lives of their children and their children, we didn't even get into the economic statistics in terms of how much money the white community makes as opposed to the black. We didn't get into that, but they're there. Go look at that document, that racial equity. Folks making 40% on the dollar and having to survive with 3 or 4 families. But look what happened. If I'm not mistaken, and you correct me if I'm wrong, without legislation, without any coercion, the hospital system raised their minimum wage to $15 an hour. Am I wrong in that? Bond Secures and Prisma. No legislation. That decision was made because the folks who ran them said, we need to do something. Either they couldn't find workers because they wouldn't come for less, or they kind of figured out it's a combination of both. We think there are other decisions that can be made in this community. The same way that Prisma and Bond Secure saw this may be good for business. Can we make some other decisions that same way to raise the standard of living of folk who need that changed? Yes, ma'am.
Just going back to the lunch and learn, like, can anybody go to that?
Not yet. Not
I
yet.
was looking on your website, I couldn't find the rest.
Yeah. No, not yet. But that is something that we've talked about as we move forward. So the question was, can anybody do the lunch and learns? And I do think that's going to be an important part of this. How do we open up that opportunity for people to have some of the same types of safe environments to ask questions and hear other people's ideas? So more to come there. To Merle's point, there are some that suggest that Greenville County is missing out on $3 billion a year in economic activity because of racial inequity. $3 billion in economic activity in Greenville County. Yes, ma'am.
There are thousands of hundreds, if not thousands, of organizations that are already here in the community. And I'm wondering how you anticipate, like, not having to reinvent the wheel, because there are plenty of organizations that are already doing amazingly good work.
That's right. So the question was, there are clearly a lot of organizations focused in a lot of the space that we're talking about. They're doing great work. How do we not reinvent the wheel? How do we not turn someone off because they think we're encroaching, right? We all get a little territorial with what we're focused on. And that's going to be the part where whoever we hire as this new executive director, in addition to the board that we will put around this person to support them, is going to have to help bring organizations together. And sometimes that means that REEM is leading out front. And sometimes that may mean that REEM is way in the background. That's going to be that's the tricky part. And we can't reinvent the wheel. We're not going to have the staff. We're not going to have the bandwidth. We're not going to have the financial capacity. We're going to have to depend on organizations who are already doing a wonderful job in this community to help move it forward.
It seems like this is the kind of thing where you can't work in isolation. You need everybody.
Absolutely. This is us getting the hook.
Yeah. You've got good peripheral vision.
Yes, I'm very self-aware.
Thank you so much,
Sure.
David and Merle, both. We do appreciate your being here and speaking with us today and giving us a little bit of a progress report, at least, and a bit of an appetizer for what's to come. I know that I speak for all of these women and the rest of our members saying that we'll be anxiously awaiting the outcomes and the recommendations and how we might be a part of impacting the community with the work we do, aligning with some of what you recommend. And somebody else alluded to the idea of integrating with other organizations, how that word gets out, how we embrace all the systems that are out there already to work on this together. We look forward to, again, having you come and talk to us maybe, or giving us more information at some point, or some other programs that might follow up with this when there's more content to be shared. So thank you all for joining us tonight, both those of you who are in person as well as those of you on the live stream. And I'm sure we'll have additional people listen to a recorded version of it later on. My job, I'm Tommy Reese. I'm on the board of Greenville Women Giving as the chair of the education committee. Our group provides this series of 5 topics during the year, one focusing on each of our spotlight areas in which we grant funds each year. Tonight, obviously, was the human services spotlight. And I wanted to thank particularly the coordinators for this program, Judy Brown, Jenny Mitchell, sorry, Jenny, took a second there, and Beth Cruz, who put this together, got the speakers, arranged the setting, and also the reception that we'll be moving to shortly. Let me remind you of our next program, which will spotlight on health. That will be Adult Mental Health Effective Solutions for Greenville's at-risk communities. That will be held on Thursday, October 14th, and that will be a midday meeting at the Kroc Center. We typically do those with lunch. It will be a little bit different probably because of our COVID protocols, in that we will have the program and speakers first, as we've been doing, and followed by a box lunch available as you leave, and you can eat there if you so choose after the program, so that it allows people to have a little higher level of comfort with safety, with masks and so forth. Thank you for participating. Hope to see you again soon, and we will adjourn. Those of you who are comfortable doing so, we do have our typical refreshments, our hors d'oeuvres and wine and other beverages in the room next door. So you can go through doors here or go out to the lobby and down the hall and into the other entrance either. If you would like to come to the reception but keep your mask on, that's fine. Or take it off and enjoy the food and beverage. Or some people I know said that they will leave after the program, and that's perfectly fine too. Whatever you are most comfortable doing. So thank you all for being here. Have a great evening.